Welcome everyone to the very first Analytics for the Behavioral Science course online lecture. Past semester grades have shown that students have benefited tremendously from the flipped classroom approach. This format allows you to go back at any time that is convenient for you and review the lectures as many times as you like. You will also be able to pause the lecture to take notes, something you can't do with an in-class lecture. Analytics can be a tough class, but is very manageable with the right resources and study habits. As you go through this very first lecture on general study tips, you will notice that following segments of the lecture there will be quiz questions. These quiz questions are there to help you learn the material, and it's perfectly okay if you go back to the video segments and find answers if you do not know them. The focus of these online lectures is learning. Testing will come later as you take the in-class quizzes and exams. I highly recommend that as you view these online lectures that you will take notes like you would in a normal lecture. The advantage to you, of course, is that when it comes to in-class quizzes, I will let you use those notes that you have taken. Because statistics tends to be a very difficult course, I want to start the semester off talking about general study tips. Based on previous semesters, most successful students had to change their study habits from what they normally used in other college courses. I spent 4 years as an academic advisor for students on academic warning and probation. Those students who utilized these tips I'm about to share with you ended up having successful college careers. Let me tell you about one particular student who was suspended for a year because of poor grades. When he returned back from suspension, he posted a 3.89 GPA that first semester. The following semester, he posted a 4.0. So I asked him what changed from before suspension, and he said his mentality changed. He realized success required hard work. He realized in his mind that success in college courses was 80% hard work and only 20% intelligence. So that meant if he worked hard, then he would get at least a B grade in every one of his courses. So much like the Auburn Creed, he believed in work, hard work. And guess what? Statistics is mostly hard work. Most concepts are not very difficult, and the hardest computation is a square root function. Everything else is just basic math, and also some learning Microsoft Excel. There are a lot of little processes that are necessary, but by the end of the day, if you put in the work, you will be successful in this course. If you want to be successful in any course, then you have to set aside the time to be successful. The definition of a full-time student is one who spends at least 12 hours in class and 24 hours outside of class in a typical week. That's 36 hours a week total. In other words, that's what it means to be full-time. That works out to 2 hours studying outside of class for every hour in class. So that means for the 4-credit analytics course, that means you should set aside 8 hours a week on average for this course. You may find that as you go through the course, you may need more hours or you may need less, but starting out, give yourself the best chance to do well and plan those 8 hours a week in your schedule. Most classes may not need 2 hours outside of class for every hour in class. But statistics is not like most classes. I think it's harder. So I think in order to do well, you want to make sure you have those hours dedicated in your week. If you're taking a 5-week summer course, then you'll want to put in 3 times the hours suggested in a typical semester, which means about 24 hours outside of class in a week. My next suggestion is to read the textbook and take notes either before, during, or after the lecture. Research has shown that your ability to comprehend the written text is the strongest predictor of a final grade in a course. And reading is more than just passing one's eyes over the words like one would read a novel. Rather, reading comprehension is stopping to make sure you understand the material, asking questions, and relating the content to what you have already previously learned before you move on to the next section. This takes time. You'll see that every study tip assumes that you have the time to take advantage of the strategy. Make sure you give yourself the time to be successful when you read. In addition to reading the textbook, you should also be watching the online lectures and attending class and labs. Every component of this course is designed for your success. Watching the lectures or attending class or labs are not substitutes for reading. Attending class is not a substitute for online lectures. The more components that you participate in, the better you will do in the course. Research tells us to really understand course material, you need to be exposed to that material at least 3 times. So that means if you're reading, watching the online lectures, and attending class and labs, then you're going to be exposed to the material at least 3 times and will increase your chances for success. Make sure that you are taking notes in class, while reading, and while watching the online lectures. Research has shown that in just 2 hours following a lecture, students lose 50% or half of the content that was presented when they're not taking notes. 2 days later, they lose another 50%. So in other words, after 2 days, 75% of the material has been forgotten. So make sure that you take notes and make sure you're reviewing those notes. Again, the advantage to you is that if you take notes, you can use those notes on in-class quizzes. Most students complete classwork and homework for their courses. The difficulty comes from actually understanding the work that they just completed. A lot of times students complete an assignment or worksheet to say it's done and then move on to something else without making sure they actually understand the work. Statistics requires conceptual understanding. Students who just try to memorize do not do well in this course. The worksheets and assignments are set up for you to do well and be successful on the exams. That only works if you understand the material on those worksheets and assignments. Your performance on the worksheets are strong predictors of exam scores. And so if you understand the classwork, you understand the worksheets, then you're going to most likely do well on the exams. This next point I can't emphasize enough. Make sure you are preparing for exams early. Don't wait until the day before to start studying. If you distribute your learning, you will better retain the information when it comes to the exams. Interestingly, research tells us that there is no real difference between grades for a single exam whether the students cram or distribute their learning. However, the difference comes with retention. Those who cram forget much of the material sooner than those who distribute their learning. This is critical in this class because just by nature, everything we learn in statistics builds on itself. We are constantly using information that we used previously in earlier modules. So if you are cramming, then you are unnecessarily relearning material over and over and over again, and by the time you get to the end of the course, you have not been efficient with your time, and you're probably more frustrated than students who distributed their learning and made sure that they understood the material before going on. Don't wait until the day or 2 days before the exam to really start preparing for that exam. I want to make sure that you're using all the resources that are available to you. In case you don't know, there are practice exams for each module exam on the course modules page of the website. Questions from the class worksheets and those questions from the practice exams are very similar, if not the same, to that on the actual exam. The only real difference is the application scenario. The practice exam can help you find those areas or those concepts that you're not understanding well, and then you can take those concepts or those questions and you can come see myself or one of the TAs, and we can get those concerns resolved before you take the actual exam. I also want to make you aware of the module concepts handouts. Those are there to help you with the conceptual material that you should know before going into the exam. The concept handouts can also be helpful when you prepare for the in-class quizzes. You'll notice a lot of those questions on the in-class quizzes stem from those concepts in the handout. I recommend that you print out those concept handouts and follow along and make notes when viewing online lectures, reading, or attending class. Lastly, make sure you're completing the classwork as we talked about already. The classwork is also designed to help you with the exams and looks very similar to them. If you understand those worksheets from class, then you're going to do better on the exams and you're going to be better prepared. This next tip is probably the most important, and that is to study with other students in the class. So Bill McKeechee, he is a researcher who studies teaching and learning, and he argues that the most effective teaching method is students learning from other students. If you think about it, everything that you have learned in your life, the majority of it has come from your friends or your peers. The point that he makes is that there is limited contact between students and professors and much more availability for contact among student peers. Being able to explain material to another student requires deeper processing, and that deeper processing will help you retain the material. So when I think of that, I'm reminded about a quote by Albert Einstein. Einstein said that you don't know anything until you can explain it to your grandparents. His argument is that if you can't explain it to someone else, then you don't really know it. So as you are studying within your groups, don't just listen to explanations of difficult concepts from other people, but rather seek to explain them to other group members. So in other words, it pays to be the tutor, not to be tutored. So study groups can be advantageous because you can hold each other accountable and you can quiz each other on the material. My one warning for group studying is that you make sure that you are productive. Unproductive studying groups will use the time to be social rather than to learn the material. So when you're working with your peers, make sure that you come prepared and stay on task. If you do, then you will learn the material better than someone trying to learn it by themselves. Also, don't forget I hold office hours. I think sometimes students are intimidated by the professors and they don't want to approach them. Or maybe sometimes they feel like they're bothering their professors. Or maybe sometimes they feel like their professors don't care about them. Or maybe they're just intimidated by the professor. Whatever it may be, I just want you to realize that the office hours that I have in the syllabus and on the course website are there for you, and that's your time. I'll stop what I'm doing to talk with you, so don't feel like you're bothering me in any way. Also, don't feel like you need to come by just because you don't know something. If you want to just explain the concept to me and make sure you understand it, that would be a good use of the time as well. If you want to talk about preparing for graduate school, the time is there for that as well. And I mentioned that I was an academic advisor, so I may be able to help you out. So bottom line is I encourage you to visit during those office hours. The next tip tends to be a surprise for students, but in this course there is nothing that we talk about that is not available on the internet for free. Everything in this course is free access. If you do a Google search, guess what? You're going to find t-tests, you're going to find standard deviations, you're going to find interpretations for confidence intervals. It's all out there already. The reason why you're taking this course is because your major curriculum requires you to take it. You're not likely to look up statistics and learn it on your own. The course exposes you to something useful that you wouldn't otherwise search out. But because everything is already available online, that means the internet becomes an excellent resource for a quick question. A Google search might even provide you with a better explanation than I can give, or even give you a useful example. So don't be afraid to use the internet or the library, especially if myself or a TA is not available. There is nothing in this course that is a secret that you can't find online. When it comes to long-term success, this last tip is probably the most important. That tip is for you to be flexible in your thinking and to increase your capacity to solve problems. I'm talking about increasing your cognitive ability. It is the single best predictor of your success in your profession. Cognitive ability accounts for 40% of the variability of your success, which means that 40% of the reason why people are successful depends on their ability to think, to solve problems, and to be flexible. So instead of trying to just get through your courses to complete your degree by memorizing definitions and factual information, instead try to understand the material and try to apply that material to novel and new situations. As you go through your material, ask how this material can help you solve problems, because when you do, you are able to expand your ability to think cognitively, and in turn you increase your chances of being successful later in life. Students are surprised to hear that a student's GPA only accounts for 10% of their professional success. The rest has to do with other things other than college GPA. Students are even more surprised to learn that just getting a degree only accounts for 1% of their success. Essentially, 99% of what makes people successful in their professions has to do with other things other than getting a college degree. And I think that makes a little bit of sense. We can all think of people who didn't get college degrees and are very successful, and we can probably also think of individuals who got college degrees and are not very successful. Just getting through your college education may not lead to long-term success. Some students just try to get through their next exam like it's some sort of hurdle, only to find out that they've missed a lot of opportunities to improve their chances of being very successful later in life. So my warnings to you is don't fall into that trap. Make sure that as you learn the material, not only in this course but in other courses as well, that you're asking those how and those why questions to increase your cognitive ability. As a father, I hear a lot of questions from my children about why this and why that, and sometimes just why after every possible explanation that I give. And it's not a reason to get annoyed with your children, because this is how children learn. If you really want to learn how to be more successful, then follow their lead. Ask those how and those why questions. Do not just try to memorize or just to take anything at face value. So I just want to thank you again for watching this lecture, and I hope it leads to changes to your study habits. I wish you a successful semester, and please let me know what I can do to help you. I want you to do well in this course, and I also want you to do well in life in general. Thank you.